Everyone, welcome. I think Alicia said that we are live, so I hope you all are making it in okay. And thank you for joining us for our webinar. I apologize about the ambient noise of street traffic, but it is the world we live in. I think we're gonna pull up the slides really quick, or maybe we do introductions before slides are coming up. Happy to do either way. I also am not sure if people are actually here. Okay, great. All right. I'm starting to see the chat. Thank you all for letting us know. Welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Lauren Newman. I'm the Youth and Schools Organizer here at TA, and I'll pass it to Philip.
Hi everyone, I'm Philip Mietkowski, and I'm the Senior Director of Research and Policy at TA.
And we are so excited for you all to be here with us to learn more, or just, we probably have a wide range of folks, some that are maybe more daylighting experts than myself, and some that are learning about daylighting for the first time. So wherever you're coming at for this webinar, we're glad you're here. And I see that some folks are already introducing themselves in the chat, but we do have an icebreaker. If you could share your name, your connection to TA, and your favorite type of daylighting treatment. We would love to see some of those responses before we get started and let the rest of the folks kind of trickle in. I have a feeling there's probably a little bit of a lag in seeing responses, but I do see some folks from the Bronx, Windsor Terrace, Bushwick, Queens. Let's see, do we have every borough represented yet? I see Chelsea, David and Chelsea, Fresh Meadows. Thank you, Liz, for sharing your favorite type of daylighting. Bike parking. We'll be talking about that in the presentation. All right. It's okay to not know what's your favorite type. But true, glad that you're here. Bike parking, got another fan. Greenery, Daniel, that's also my favorite type of daylighting. And then art and trees, yes. Thank you, Jenny. All right. I have a feeling folks are probably gonna continue to trickle in, so we'll kind of wait maybe a few more, just one more minute for folks to share in the chat, and then we'll get started at 6:37. Oh, I see someone from San Francisco. We have a fact in our slide deck about San Francisco. Melina. Glad to see that some folks are coming from even outside of New York City. All right, well, it's 6:37. Alicia, if you want to move on to the next slide. So what we're gonna really be focusing on today is just really giving a kind of an in-depth overview of what is daylighting, why is it a problem, how do we daylight an intersection, the various benefits that daylighting can provide, and sneak peek It's a lot of benefits. And then we'll share some data on how well it works, because it does work, if that's a spoiler. And we'll conclude with a few calls to action, whether that be through our Green School Safe Streets campaign, which I'll be talking more about, or through providing testimony in the upcoming public hearing on April 21st. So there's going to be lots of ways for you all to um, put these skills to action after the webinar. And then of course we'll open up to Q&A at the end. Next slide. So the problem. I really don't have to remind you, next slide, that we live in a very crowded city. Millions of people move through New York City streets every single day. Nearly every intersection is primed for a crash. No matter how you're traveling, whether it's by foot, by bike, by car, people have their views obstructed by vehicles parked right up to the crosswalk. And this leads to more crashes, more injuries, and sadly, more deaths, especially for pedestrians. In fact, nearly 90% of pedestrian fatalities in New York City take place at intersections with no daylighting. Needless to say, this is a crisis. So this scene is probably a daily reality for so many of us, inching into the intersection with peering around cars, trying to ensure that a street is safe to enter before crossing. As a pedestrian, you can't see this oncoming Subaru. It's completely obstructed from view until you're several steps into the crosswalk. And the scene, next slide, is the same from the driver's point of view, right? Even if you're doing your due diligence as a driver, making a full stop, this adult pedestrian that we see moving is, again, fully obstructed until they're nearly a quarter of a way through the intersection. No one is set up for success in these scenarios, and the consequences are dire. Next slide. Over 250 people a year are killed in traffic crashes every year in New York City. And if we increase that by a magnitude of 10, you get the number of New Yorkers seriously injured, 3,000. Half of these would be preventable through the implementation of daylighting at our intersections. This issue touches all of us, no matter where we live in New York City. This is not a light pollution map. It's a map of all the traffic fatalities and serious injuries in just the last 3 years, between 2022 and 2024. Traffic violence affects every community in New York City. 1 in 3 New Yorkers has been injured in a traffic crash, and 70% know someone who has been injured or killed. Next slide. So what is daylighting? At TA, we refer to daylighting as a two-step process. It's, of course, removing the parking space closest to an intersection to increase visibility, but it's also repurposing that space with a public amenity to discourage cars from parking illegally and/or whipping around a less obstructed corner. Universal daylighting just makes common sense. It's law in New York State, along with 42 other states across the US. But despite this state requirement, New York City has long overridden the law and has allowed parking right up to its crosswalks. There is currently both state and city legislation to change the law and require universal daylighting in New York City. And those pieces of legislation have received ample amount of support, 70 local elected officials, 20 community boards, which are representing 3 million New Yorkers. We've all called for universal daylighting to be reinstated in New York City. Next slide. So let's lay out some of the benefits. Next slide. Some of those benefits are one, increased visibility, right? We've seen that through the GIFs in this presentation. By removing obstacles that block sightlines, daylighting helps all road users see each other at intersections. Um, Daylighting also can help shorten crossings, especially when curb extensions are incorporated. Pedestrians have shorter distances to cross and thus have less exposure to danger. Daylighting can also slow the turns of turning traffic, um, only with curb extensions, of course, because they can create uh, they discourage cars from cutting that corner and taking um, a less safe turn. And of course, at TA, we always say paint is not protection. That that saying translates not just for bike lanes, but for daylighting as well. And then lastly, the added amenities are expand the wide-ranging benefits of daylighting. We can reclaim this space and we can make more room for trees, for greenery, for benches, for bike parking, and so many other much needed amenities. Um, but let's be clear, right? Like not all daylighting is equal. So daylighting can be a quick and cheap fix with just paint or flexi posts, but it's most effective when it is combined with concrete curb extensions to shorten crossing distances and to slow turning vehicles. So if we think of it as like this 5-star rating mechanism, 1 star is no daylighting, right? We don't want that. 2 stars, better daylighting, but just with paint. 3 stars could be paint and flexi posts. Again, still not a lot of protection there, but at least prohibits cars from maybe parking in that spot. 4 stars, daylighting through curb extensions, and then 5 stars, my favorite, daylighting with curb extensions and amenities like greenery, bioswales, bike parking, etc. So let's go ahead and visualize some of these benefits. Number one, increased visibility. When here's the GIF again, right? When we allow parking right up to the crosswalk or intersection, people approaching it, whether on foot, bike, or car, are hidden from others' view, right until the last second. So imagine how much more of the scene you'd be able to see if that SUV and that truck weren't there. Next slide. This is a great example, right? This mother and daughter are walking to school, are immediately safer in this intersection. And it also lessens the need for crossing guards for students to arrive safely to and from school. Infrastructure creates, less of a need for crossing guards and putting folks on, on corners to ensure safety. Number two is shortening crossing distances. In this graphic, we see 2 daylit curb extensions, which create like this pinch point, communicating to drivers that they should slow down as they turn off from this major thoroughfare to this 20-mile-per-hour slow zone. On a similar note, next slide, we can slow turns. This graphic kind of demonstrates, the turning radius of a car, and as it has to make a more careful maneuver around that turn once the curb extension is implemented. And then of course, amenities, my favorite, right? Thinking back to our icebreaker, We had a lot of various favorite ways to implement daylighting. Um, and these amenities can serve a multitude of purposes. If you're not familiar with spatial equity, the spatial equity tool, I highly recommend poking around on it after this webinar. It's spatialequity.nyc. And a few of these next graphics are showcasing data from that platform. But essentially, it visually represents geographic disparities when it comes, whether it's related to environmental justice, health concerns, or mobility considerations, and shows that disparity graphically. So this screenshot shows bus speeds by council district. So if your neighborhood, for example, has slow buses, you might benefit from, next slide, bus bulb out daylighting. Here is a daylit bus bulb with trees and a bus shelter in Bed-Stuy. Bus riders are able to stay shaded and cool while they wait for their bus. And trees provide additional benefits through stormwater management and cooling, and the sidewalk stays clear and unobstructed. So again, so many benefits. Next slide. And if, for example, your neighborhood is flood prone, you might benefit from, next slide, building bioswales and planting trees in daylit spaces. Here is a beautiful example of the implementation of greenery in Bushwick. And one fun fact is that installing just one bioswale can manage more than 1,000 gallons of water during a storm. This reduces the risk of flash floods and can maintain accessibility for people on foot and keep water out of those basement apartment units. Next slide. And then I remember a few people mentioned their favorite type of daylighting was bike parking. Well, if your district struggles with sparse bike parking, you could benefit from a corner daylit with bike parking. Next slide. Just like right here, right? We see this. This is from McGinnis Boulevard in Greenpoint. Note that while there's no curb extension here, it doesn't have all the safety benefits possible, but installing this bike parking off of the sidewalk improves curb access for drivers and passengers, and is an ideal solution for dense residential neighborhoods, commercial corridors, and outside subway stations. Next. So all these recommendations sound nice, right? But what about the data? Does it work? It sure does. So just to name a few statistics, daylighting reduces pedestrian injuries by 30%. And here, when it was studied in New York City, we've seen daylighting through curb extensions reduce pedestrian injuries by 70%. And daylit intersections in San Francisco saw 14% fewer crashes. So we know it works. What can we do to advocate for these changes? Well, right now, if you haven't already, you can sign our petition to demand City Council and City Hall support the Intro 1138 to bring universal daylighting to every neighborhood. I don't know if anyone on staff can drop that link in the chat for everyone. But if you have already signed that petition, you can go ahead and give it a quick share. And then another way that you can support the movement is through getting involved with the Green Schools Safe Streets campaign. And that is my personal favorite way for you to get involved as the Youth in Schools organizer at TA. And I'll do a mini deep dive into what that campaign is about. So stay tuned for that. And then lastly, we definitely want all of you to, well, all of you who are New York City residents to testify at the April 21st public hearing, which Philip will be sharing more about later. So next slide. Amazing. Thank you, Liz. So what is Green Schools Safe Streets? This is actually, as I mentioned, a labor of love that is now your central hub for finding actionable resources, interactive activities, and powerful tools designed to help school communities reclaim street space, improve safety, and build environmental resilience. I'm going to actually put the link to the toolkit in the chat after my section of the presentation, just so that everyone can kind of explore it, but don't want to distract you from all the goodness, so I'll wait until the Q&A section. Next slide. So when you do navigate to the website, at the top of the webpage, you'll find a teacher's guide, which lays out discussion questions and walks teachers through how to bring each activity to their classroom. Among the activities offered is a walk audit, the spatial equity exploration, and is a design challenge. And so the walk audit is really designed to get students outside, walking and experiencing their school environment, their sidewalks, crossing intersections safely, making those observations, and thinking of ways that they could improve the conditions outside of their school. The second activity, spatial equity exploration, really utilizes that spatial equity tool that I mentioned earlier about how we can graphically or visually see the disparities in environmental injustice, health injustice, and mobility injustice in our city. And students can really hone in on their community and think of different strategies and solutions that they would want to present to decision makers. And then a design challenge that really inspires students to redesign the street outside of their school and utilize street mix for that. Next slide. And then the other components of the toolkit is a Safe Streets glossary, which provides clear student-friendly definitions, both visual and written, of important terms used in street design, urban planning, and environmental sustainability. And our advocacy guide prepares school communities to bring what they discovered and the solutions they want to call for straight to the decision makers. So again, I'm going to pop the link for the toolkit in the chat a little later on so you can peruse the resources after the webinar. If you are a teacher yourself, I encourage you to use this in your classroom. If you are a parent, I encourage you to talk to your to your students' teacher, to your kids' teachers. And if you live nearby a school, I encourage you to just share the resource if it moves you to do so. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Philip to provide an overview of Intro 1138 and some prep tips for the upcoming hearing.
Hi, folks. Philip Miatkowski here. For those who joined since the beginning, I lead TA's research and policy teams. So just want to spend a little bit of time talking about a really exciting bill at the City Council level. Like Lauren mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, New York State law bans parking within 20 feet of all crosswalks across the city. The city, unfortunately, decades ago, decided to carve itself out of that requirement. And that's why we so frequently see cars parked all the way up to the crosswalk and frequently into the crosswalk as well. So we now have a bill to repeal that carve out and be in compliance with state law. And the bill is Intro 1138. It's a city council bill introduced by council member Julie Wan. And this is truly a terrific bill. There are just so many great components in here. And we're really excited that the council member has introduced it with such strong language. So the bill calls for universal daylighting to all intersections citywide, and it would ban parking within 20 feet of the crosswalk. And that's what's recommended by NACTO and by a lot of folks in different cities. And it also requires that physical barriers and amenities be installed at a minimum of 1,000 intersections every single year. So whether it's a bioswale or bike parking or trees or greenery, all of those could be included as part of that physical barrier requirement at a minimum of 1,000 intersections every single year. And also very importantly, it also requires annual updates on the progress in compliance with the law. So this is really important also for us to know where DOT is installing these amenities, what kind of amenities are they're being installed is also required in the reporting, and that'll also ensure that these daylighting amenities are installed equitably across the city. Next month, on Monday, April 21st, there is going to be a hearing on Intro 1138. And this is your opportunity to make your voices heard, that you support not just daylighting, but also the important part of adding the amenities, and that you support this bill by Councilmember Julie Wan. So mark your calendars. We'll make sure that in the follow-up email, we include a lot of information about how to sign up for the hearing, and more tips and more information to stay tuned until then. And on the next slide, here we have the listed council members. We already have a great showing of council members who have co-sponsored the bill. We still need just a couple more in order to get a majority of the council. So take a look here if your council member is already a co-sponsor, and if they're not, they need to hear from you that you strongly support this bill. And if you're not sure who your council member is, I'll show you in 1 second how to look that up. And testifying at a city council hearing might sound like it's something really difficult, or but we're here to help you out and prepare you for the public hearing. So in the follow-up email, we'll include a full page, full website on telling you all of the prep tips and where to sign up and where to show up on April 21st next month. But just very quickly, each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and you are allowed to read from your written testimony. In fact, I would actually encourage you to not just write out your testimony ahead of time, but also practice it, and practice it just so that you feel confident, and to ensure that when that buzzer goes off, because they're really strict with the 2-minute timer, that your entire testimony fits underneath that 2 minutes. You do have the opportunity to both testify either in person or virtually as well. So if you do want to testify virtually, you do have to sign up ahead of time. That is very important. We'll make sure we include that in the follow-up email that we send out after this webinar. And then what to say in your public testimony. You only have 2 minutes, so there isn't a lot to say. So just very quickly, introduce yourself. Make sure that you thank the chair and the committee for convening the hearing. and then explain, why you support Intro 1138. And what's most impactful is hearing something that directly affects your life or your intersection, or why you specifically are calling for daylighting and how it would improve walking around in your neighborhood, or how it would improve safety for your neighbor, for your family. So make it as personal as possible, and just make sure that you include the phrase that you are in support of Intro 1138 or whatever bill you're speaking in favor of. We do have a few extra minutes, so I'll actually share my screen. And Lauren mentioned earlier that we have a tool called Spatial Equity. This is a tool that we worked in collaboration with MIT on, and great. So yeah, this is a tool that's publicly available, called spatialequity.nyc. And we worked in close collaboration with MIT on this, in order to rank all city council districts, all community boards on 25 different metrics, everything from tree canopy, asthma rates, traffic fatalities, traffic injuries, what percentage of streets have a bike lane. Um, and this could also be helpful for your testimony either next month or for any other future testimony, either to the city council or at a community board meeting. I'm going to just do a live demo here just for a couple minutes to show you how this could potentially beef up your testimony. So this is what the page looks like when you go to spatialequity.nyc. And we're going to click over to community profiles here on the left. And I should stress that all of the data that is available on this website comes from reliable sources like New York City Open Data or the US Census. And once you arrive here, you can either type in your exact address to find out what city council district you're in, or on the map. I'm a very visual person, so I usually just like to directly click on the map and just get there that way. And that way, now I click Greenpoint, and now for those folks who don't know who their council member was on that earlier slide, you'll see here that this is City Council District 33, and it's represented by Council Member Lincoln Ressler. And when you click into any of these districts, you'll see at the bottom left here that what are the top 3 challenges for this particular city council district. Or over here, I'll switch over to community board if you want to speak on the community board level. What are the top 3 challenges for this community board based off of our 25 different data layers? And you'll see that in Brooklyn Community Board 1, the top challenges out of our 25 data layers for this particular community board are tree canopy, air pollution, and extreme heat. So, this could be a really great way in order to beef up your testimony and to include that in when you're testifying in front of the city council. So if I were to click on tree canopy 1, I'm going to get even more detail here. So I'll see a pop-up box show up, and it says that Brooklyn Community Board 1 ranks 54th out of 59 community boards for tree canopy, with only 11% tree canopy coverage for the district. So this could be a really great data point to include in your testimony to really drive the point home that, maybe in particular that your neighborhood has really low tree canopy and therefore has really high air pollution and extreme heat, and to call for more daylighting with greenery and trees. So you can use the city's own data. This comes from New York City's own open data source to say that based on the city's own data, my community board really suffers from low tree canopy, really high air pollution, really high extreme summertime heat, and that you're specifically calling for a specific type of daylighting. there's a lot more to this website, so feel free to explore here, and I'll make sure to drop the link in the chat. And that's it. Wanted to give one additional perspective of what else you could include in your testimony. I think that's it for me. Any questions? I think we're at the questions point, right, Lauren?
We are at questions. Alicia, do you mind going back one slide? Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody has questions in the chat, I'm sorry I haven't been monitoring it very closely. Um, I'm scanning for questions. Will this webinar be available to share with our networks? This webinar is recorded. I believe it will be shared out to all attendees. So feel free to share it widely. Let's see. Other questions? Um, Question from Liz. What should people who plan to testify expect in terms of day they'll be called? What time of day they'll be called? If anyone able to let them know if they're called, if they're testifying virtually, etc. Philip, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, Liz, that's a really great question. So, what should people who plan to testify expect in terms of time of day? So the hearing does start at 10 a.m. on Monday, April 21st. And it's usually a hearing date. Well, actually, I think it's too soon to tell how, what kind of day we're going to be looking at. I recognize a lot of names here who were testifying at the December hearing, and that was a really, really long day. I think we were there for like 10 hours. That is not going to be anything like that. Very likely that this one will start at 10 o'clock or shortly thereafter and wrap the hearing portion. So this is the portion where the city council members are going to be questioning DOT, and there's going to be conversation between the council members on the transportation committee. We'll probably wrap up after an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then it will switch over to the public testimony. And it'll go, those who are in person will testify first, and then there'll be a portion for those testifying virtually. So it's hard to tell exactly this far out if what exact time, and we never know exactly what time because we don't know what kind of debate there will be. So those are just rough estimates, and we're still far enough out from the hearing date that more bills could be added. So if a lot more bills are going to be added to the hearing date, it'll be a slightly longer hearing. So we'll just need to keep an eye out for that. But I would at this point, expect the public testimony to start around noon that day.
We've got a couple more questions. Philip, I'm wondering if you also want to take this question from Donald. Fully support daylighting, but how do we respond if someone is concerned the effect daylighting would have on turning of large trucks / fire engines?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the in regards to, so I guess it could be taken from different perspectives. Is there concern for folks who are standing on the corner? And that's why we're calling for those barriers. That's why we're calling for ensuring that it's not just paint only, and that large trucks or any vehicle would be able to cut the corner and go over the paint or go over the flex posts. And you could also, I'm not sure what angle you were asking this question, if it's in regards to whether the fire trucks would have enough space to be able to go around the corner. That is something, so FDNY is, there is coordination between DOT and the fire department, and we do see daylighting in almost every city across the country. I mean, in fact, New York City is the only jurisdiction in all of New York State that doesn't have daylighting. So it's done in San Francisco and Portland and every single jurisdiction in New York State as well. But we do know that DOT does stay in contact and coordination with FDNY to ensure that there is enough clearance for those turning vehicles.
All right, let's see. James has a question. Is reporting cars parked next to crosswalks to 3011 helpful whenever I do? These cases are dismissed. Um, yes. It's I So it's helpful to log them, but I would also advocate for bringing it up the ladder. Definitely, reaching out to your local electeds um, to express your concern. Right, there's power in numbers. So if there is any sort of like mobilization you can do, encouraging neighbors to also report or bring it up to your local elected, definitely has a bigger impact than just reporting it on 311 because we all know how frustrating that that system can be.
Yeah,
Um,
I see another question that's similar to that. Small point, is it currently illegal to park into the crosswalk? Short answer is yes, it is illegal. It is illegal. Um, and hopefully with daylighting and those physical elements, there wouldn't even be the opportunity for those cars to park illegally. So no tickets for the drivers, still and keeps it brings all the safety benefits of keeping the crosswalk clear for that visibility, plus all of the amenities of whatever's brought into that daylit spot.
Sid, the webinar will be shared via email after, and it's being recorded. Um, Sorry, a lot of questions coming in. I'm gonna Sorry, I'm trying to pull up where they've been corralled. Just give me 1 second. Uh okay.
See, oh,
Curious how we suggest to respond to DOT pushback on universal daylighting. Philip, I'm gonna let you take this question.
yeah, sure. So, yeah, the I would recommend that. Yeah, we've been in close, communication with city council member, and I think having the bill pass with the universal daylighting is really important, so that we aren't doing an intersection by intersection fight of putting in these amenities. So the bill would bring universal daylighting to every single intersection across the city, and therefore wouldn't require this intersection by intersection fight of needing to bring in every single bike corral or bioswale or greenery. Um, is how I would respond to that. Another question here about a funding element in regards to ensuring that there is, I think it was in regards to paying for the barriers and the physical elements. So that's an important component of this. Of course, we want to make sure that any mandate that is passed by the city council also is paid for. And we're currently just beginning the budget negotiations. City council rather is just beginning the budget negotiations for the next fiscal year. So those just started this month, and they won't wrap up until the end of June. Um, the mayor did include a budget line item for bringing hardened daylighting to hundreds of intersections every single year. We're of course going to ensure that at minimum it pays for the 1,000 intersections that this bill would bring into law. So it's just the very beginning, the first preliminary budget. There's going to be budget hearings and a lot of back and forth between the mayor, city hall, and the city council, and we'll ensure that there is enough funding for the bill.
All right, we have a question. Do you recommend communicating to a community board where they love parking? The conversation is important, but I'm afraid that it can backfire and they may push the council member who has not sponsored it yet. Yeah, I mean there's really complex dynamics at play with community boards. You can encounter, you know, opposition that wasn't necessarily there if you amplify it. Um, I think it's a case by case um basis. If you bring a lun a large group of folks out, in support, and it's not just one person, um, with the, running the risk of being outnumbered, I would say might be worth it, but, I would definitely say have the numbers if you're going into a contentious space. Um, let's see.
TA fighting to keep congestion pricing beyond March 21st. Yes. Yes, and the governor has said that the cameras will stay on. So stay tuned for more. An off-topic question, but I'll gladly take it.
Is that all the questions? Mm. Yeah, we have that fear too, but we're keeping the fight alive.
Any final questions either about daylighting, spatial equity, the hearing? We're happy to take them. There will be while we wait and see if there's one or two more final questions, there will be a follow-up email to today's webinar, so please keep an eye out. We'll have plenty of material in there as well.
I actually there were some questions that came into the Q&A box instead of the chat, and so I just want to uplift those questions really quick. Um someone said or asked, other than potential loss of parking, what is the opposition to daylighting? Philip, do you want to take that?
That is the only argument that I've seen. So yeah, I haven't heard of any other arguments for that.
Yeah, I have not either. I think parking is the biggest pushback, source of pushback for daylighting. Um, Another attendee asked why 20 feet and not use crosswalk and stop lines. Um,
I can take that. So currently
mhm.
that is the law required right now. So cars are required to park at the stop bar and not park into the crosswalk. So that does, like in the GIF that Lauren showed at the very beginning of the presentation, that is the problem that unfortunately both pedestrians and drivers are encountering, that there isn't that visibility, that you can't see the pedestrian until they're nearly a quarter of the way into the roadway. So we do, NACDO and other engineering guidelines require 20 feet or recommend 20 feet as the distance. And that's what council member has written into her bill.
Think with that, there are no more questions. So we'll go ahead and start wrapping us up. Um, we want to share ways to get involved if you're not already a member of TA. We encourage you to become a volunteer. We have a number of activist committees, even committees for our young people, if there's any youth on the call. Um, I would love to work with you and my colleagues, my other fellow borough organizers would love to welcome you to their teams as well. Um, of course, next step, I hope everyone is signing up to testify at city council for the hearing on April 21st. And you can, if you're not available that day, of course, submit written testimony. And that can be as long and as detailed as you'd like. And then lastly, follow us on social. That's where you can stay most up to date on everything that we have going. And you can follow us on Instagram, on X, on Blue Sky. There's so many platforms. You can find us on all of them. um, Philip, do you have anything else to add?
No, yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I loved the energy in the chat and seeing so many folks join a webinar on a Thursday night.
Yes, thanks everyone. Um, Thank you for supporting Universal Daylighting. We will see you next time for the next installment of the Freedom of Movement Forum. Topic still TBD, so stay tuned.